Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. So, yesterday Arnold Schwarzenegger released this instant viral video talking about the events at the US Capitol a few days ago. And all in all, it's a pretty good video for mainstream purposes. He talks about hope and how dark the times are, but, America will pull through, it always has. All in all, good stuff. And he also gets very personal, which I appreciate, where he opens up about his history growing up in a post-Nazi Germany. Which brings us to something that kind of bothers me about what he said in the video. He said that the events on the US Capitol were like the Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, which was a very terrible night in German history in the 1930s. My problem is that the events at the Capitol are less like the Kristallnacht and more like the Beer Hall Putsch. Now, the Beer Hall Putsch, which happened on November 9th, 1923 in Munich, Germany, this was basically an attempted coup d'etat by Hitler and the early members of the Nazi Party. I'm going to skip over a lot of details, but to broadly sum up, in the wake of World War I, the German Empire was replaced by the Weimar Republic, and it was a gong show. Nothing was really working. The economy was in tatters, and in Bavaria, there was basically a kind of corrupt ruling triumvirate of people at this point in time. They also weren't good. It's just that Hitler was worse. There's a whole lot there, but that's basically the situation before the Beer Hall Putsch. So then what Hitler and the Nazis do, as they're sort of initially fighting back and forth with power and influence in Bavaria with this triumvirate, they eventually decide, you know what, we have to take action or else our supporters are going to go join the communists, and we don't want that. So they organize what they hope will be a successful coup d'etat. And so 2,000 Nazis stormed the city center of Munich, hence why it's called the Beer Hall. We're not just talking like a crowd of people, right? Many were armed with weapons, including a machine gun that they set up in the auditorium. And so this is where it all starts to come apart. As they get to the city center, they come across a police cordon. There's a conflict that breaks out. And at the end of the conflict, you have 16 dead Nazis and 5 dead police officers. After that, you have Hitler, who he was wounded during the clash, but he managed to escape. And so after that, while he escaped, he managed to lay low for a few days, but was eventually arrested and charged with treason. This ended up, you'd think this was a good thing, but what ended up happening was this meant that his 24-day trial was put on national display to try and make an example, right? And it brought him to not only national, but international attention. And so it gave him a platform to speak about his nationalist ideals and his, ideology of fascism that he was coming up with in the wake of seeing the success of Benito Mussolini in Italy. Additionally, after this, he was sentenced to 5 years prison. And while in prison, he dictated Mein Kampf to other inmates and his fellow Nazis who were imprisoned. Then he didn't even serve 5 years. He was released after 9 months. And after those 9 months, he redirected his focus towards obtaining power through legal means, rather than attempting to use what he called revolutionary force. And that meant he needed to come up with new tactics, which led to the further development of Nazi propaganda, whom many people consider to be the chief architects and first masters of the art of propaganda. The events at the Capitol are like the Beer Hall Putsch. And like the Beer Hall Putsch, if its leaders and its members and those who participated are not adequately punished and kept in prison and, well and truly condemned and put away and buried in the dustbin of history and condemned in the strongest possible terms. If that doesn't happen, if they do not face serious, meaningful, long-term consequences for their actions at the attempted coup, then in 10 years, or perhaps in 2028, you see what happens in America might be the same as what happened in Nazi Germany. After the failed Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, 10 years later is when Hitler and the Nazi regime took power due to a failure on the part of the Weimar Republic to adequately punish them. What happened at the US Capitol should be a warning, and unfortunately it's not the Kristallnacht, and in many ways it's even more foreboding, and the fact that more people don't recognize this is definitely what's bothering me today.